Well, Merry Christmas. It is Christmas Eve, Wednesday, December 24th. I'm Jim Check with Now Media. With me, Ian Burns. I've got a Christmas tie, I think. Ian's got the Christmas hat. I have a whole Santa suit. I couldn't find it. But we do want to wish we got a Christmas card here to put up for you from the Really Big Show. We want to wish everybody a Merry, Merry Christmas from the Really Big Show. And 2026 promises to be a much bigger year for the Really Big Show. And good news is some people have made some donations as we're live here, and with that we've bought new mics. So all this clipping that we're going through, we should get be done with that. And we also bought a new switchboard, so that should help in some of the freezing. And Ian's getting a new computer. So there you go. Thank you for all the donations. We're going to plow all that money right back into the show. Again, we're a little shy of the CBC budget of $1.55 billion. Maybe if they would just cough up a little bit, because they're not using it to produce real journalism, are they? I don't think they need that much there for the propaganda they push out.
It's not even like just that 1.55 billion, though, is it? It's also they're also feasting on the subsidy schemes like put out by Google, for example.
Yeah, they're
They've
even
got
in
other
addition.
sources of revenue.
Even in addition, never enough, right? Because they said they weren't going to take it. But anyway, we don't want to get into that. We got a bunch of headlines here for you. So today, on December 24th, a whole lot of nothing for Canada, courtesy of the Liberal win. Trump talking even tougher on Canada. And policies that benefit the few at the expense of many. That seems to be a common theme. 2026 could well be shape up to be the tale of two nations heading in completely different directions. Climate religion leading Canada into an economic squandered opportunities. There's a nice headline. Yukon in desperate need of power. You're going to be just blown away with this story. Fraud, waste, incompetence, abuse. You decide. We've got a whole bunch of that to show you again. These stories we're going to check on CBC. They're likely not covered. We've got a little white blanket here in Kelowna right now too. You can see in my background there in our live shot. Canada, space ace, wasting our money. You got to love her at, $400,000 a year. Mexico contradicts liberal corporation touts. Who would have thought? And Big Red's going to be on our show at 1:30 today. So Big Red, Chris Barber, and Big Red along with Sean Carpe. And here's a cute headline. Is Aaron gunning for the Premier's job? That's pretty weak, eh? U.S. censorship is a one-way ticket to getting banned from the United States of America. And we got a lot on the left losing it, the left in their lives, and this is just all coming home to roost as they continue with their nonsense, absolute nonsense of gaslighting and misdirection, misinformation. The people that scream about misinformation and disinformation are I guess what you would call a factory of misinformation and disinformation. Yeah. Anyway, the national, we got our... Again, Merry Christmas to everybody from the Really Big Show. And if you have extra, help people out that have less. Because right now in Canada, there's a lot of people hurting. A lot of people barely able to meet their monthly obligations as they suffer through the policies that benefit the few at the expense of the many.
And look at that very happy beaver there on the Christmas card. That's what we aspire to be, isn't it? That happy, cozy little beaver.
Yeah, but it's been a tough year for Canada. And here's the National Post put out a thing. The House of Commons just capped off one of its least productive years, and also one of the least attended years. I mean, the amount of time they sat in the House of Commons is very, very short period of time, and they're ready for their vacation already. You and I talk a lot on this show. What's been done in 9 months? What have we gotten in 9 months? What can we put our finger on and say we got this? We don't even have an answer as to whether or not Canada will build a pipeline that will lead to economic prosperity for Canadians. We don't even have an answer to that question. You'd think we would at least have an answer to that question. We don't even have an answer to that question.
I do wonder, though, if any of them feel any sense of guilt whatsoever when they sit at home having done nothing for months on end, and they look at their bank account. They whip their phone out, log on to BMO or whatever it is, and see like $12,000 or something like that deposited into their bank account every month. Do you think that at any point in their lives they look at that and say, I do feel a little bit bad about that, considering I've done nothing for months and I do nothing. All I do is volunteer myself as a slave to my party's leader and very occasionally go and vote or do some lame interview. I mean, you would like to think that they feel a little bit of shame.
I don't think I'm believing you in that. Maybe some of the people in the backbenches, but the cabinet ministers and that, they definitely don't seem to feel any shame as they
But
tout.
Stacey, can you imagine that? Money for nothing, and money coming from people who, as you just mentioned, are in some cases literally malnourished because they can't afford to eat. You must, at some point, that's got to break through the barrier and make you feel like a little bit of a bad person,
When we
surely.
when we outline the fraud, waste, corruption, abuse, you have to think of it this way: there's food on your table, and they came and they took some, and then they're throwing it away. Because I mean, the Mark Rubio pointed it out: 10% of the money that goes to these NGOs worldwide, that's all that makes it at the end of the day to whatever cause they're talking about. It's all skimmed off. When we see it over and over and over again, Canada donating millions and well billions of dollars to NGOs, 4.5 billion now going to Ukraine with Chrystia Freeland, and she's shown to be a great steward of our money. She's gonna handle that $4.5 billion bag of cash, and they've already told us they won't tell us how it's going to get spent for national security. I don't know who's national security, but yeah. Here's even the CBC. This guy used to work for the CBC. Now he's like one of the lead guys at The Economist, and he's talking about the disappointment of Mark Carney so far. But then he protects him at the end. Let's hear it.
And this segues perfectly into my next question. I mean, if that was the factor, large factor behind the election of Mark Carney, that Canadians perceived him as the best person to deal with Donald Trump with threats of annexation, tariffs, how well has he done? I mean, lots of meetings have happened, no deal yet, and we're now looking at what's going to happen to CUSMA, which is so important to Canada and which we may not have in this upcoming year. How would you assess the Prime Minister's performance?
Well, he did a couple of things. He promised that he would deal with Trump, that he was the best person to deal with Trump. And if by that standard, he didn't deliver on his promise. He set deadlines. He withdrew and things like the digital services tax. He briskly backpedaled from other positions, but he didn't deliver a deal. And I think Canadians have decided that almost no one can deliver a deal right now with Donald Trump. And I think if you're going to ask me for a prediction, and I always tell people that reporters' predictions are made to make the weatherman's predictions look good, but in this instance, I would say that I think President Trump is going to be even more unpredictable in 2026. He is right now on a trajectory, a kind of a downward, uncontrolled downward trajectory that looks like an uncontrolled descent into the earth. His numbers are plummeting. He's in more and more trouble with the Epstein files. He throws up more chaff all of the time to try to distract from things like inflation and affordability, and that makes him dangerous.
What? Didn't we just see the inflation numbers? Like, I was with him on the first part. Carney's delivered nothing on his promise. I don't know about Canadians thinking nobody else could deliver. I don't know where that tie came in, and also where like Trump is in a spiral. I don't know where that's coming from either, because I mean we look at this stuff all the time. But he's right on one thing. Trump is likely going to get tougher on Canada. We've given lots of concessions, but maybe not the main concession, and that is supply management. But here's Trump talking about Canada here. Let's listen in on what he thinks of the trade deals.
We will have most of our deals finished, if not all. We haven't really had a lot of luck with Canada. I think Canada could be one where they'll just pay tariffs, not really a negotiation. We're working very diligently with Europe, the EU, which covers a lot of territory, a lot of countries, and that's the big one right now. We have the confines of a deal with China. But we haven't really We don't have a deal with Canada.
That's good.
We haven't been focused.
I mean, he says most of the deals are done, and they're moving into their next phase. And as they move into their midterms, he's going to have to work on things because, I mean, this was the disruptive phase of his presidency for sure while he was doing all these tariffs. And it's looked like it's worked. I mean, we're going to see some of the numbers later. I mean, they're bringing jobs back to the United States, and there's a lot of people talking about it. And they laid out, how many things did they lay out? The ambassador laid out how many things are, or one of the trade negotiators that are the sticking points, one of them being the Online News Act, which Canadian media refuses to even talk about, and Mark Carney has not had to address. We bring it up all the time. We've been bringing it up for 2 years as this crippled and corrupted media in Canada, and it has put its knee on our throat here in independent media. It is absolutely crushing local independent media, and they know it. They absolutely know it. And it's Mark Carney, we got to ask that question of him personally. And he said, you're not going to like the answer. The answer is we're giving more money to the CBC. And we can see what a great job the CBC is doing for Canadians. But here's one of the other big sticking points, and it's the supply management. The food professor has said time and time again, this is not good for the consumers of Canada. It's the benefit of the few at the expense of the many. And who does it really appease? You said it yesterday best. If you're looking for answers that don't seem to make sense, just use the word Quebec and you have your answer. And this is one that really, really ties into Quebec and Ontario. It definitely benefits the few. This is kibosh trade deals with not only the United States over the years, also the UK and other areas too. They just seem to be. This is the hill they want to die on.
I would say though, you know, you can make all kinds of arguments about this, that it's really bad for Canada, it's bad for Canadians, for consumers, and so on. But something that we've not said is, let's just kind of doff our Santa hat to this lobby, because they are like, they should be studied. There should be textbooks written about them. They are so successful. They are so good at what they do. I mean, it's kind of, people talk about all kinds of lobbies, don't they? The Israel lobby is one of people's favorites. Look at this lobby. It is absolutely masterful what it's done. It's so powerful. It's so good at what it sets out to do. And I just think we have to kind of recognize that there aren't really very many dairy farmers. You know, it's not like a massive industry full of like hundreds of thousands of workers or something like that. It's really not many. And look what they've pulled off. Like they've managed to get the federal government, every federal party, to sign up to sacrifice basically anything, any other industry, any trade deal with any country to protect them. That is, you know, you kind of do, at some point you have to step back and just kind of say like, well, you are very good at that, aren't you? You've done an exquisite piece of work there.
And it's not just the Liberals and the NDP; it's also the Conservatives. When they stepped into Parliament, then when they first got back, they put in a deal that said nobody touches supply management. Like, I mean, that's how strong and powerful this lobby group is. They're absolutely, and plus they kind of like sneak under the wire. Like nobody wants to talk about it. It was really the food professor that's brought it out and says who benefits, who loses, because prior to that, nobody would talk about it. They just say, oh no, it protects Canadian farmers. Does it? Does it? Who does it really protect anyway?
And he is, for having stood up like that, he is defamed and attacked relentlessly. Liberal MPs being some of his most vicious opponents. He is just a despised figure, you know, especially among obviously the dairy lobby itself. So yeah, I mean, astonishing, isn't it? Really, these people just milk cows. At the end of the day, it's not like we're used to with these lobbies and stuff. We're used to things like the Mossad and all kinds of like amazingly sophisticated intelligence networks and things like that. But it's like they just milk cows, and then they get exactly what they want from Ottawa every single time. I mean, yeah, in the Christmas spirit, let's just give them a salute.
Idaho Man says he wishes us a Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you as well. He called us a goofy, cool, quirky show. I think that's a compliment.
Nice. He also had a lot of good things to say about beavers, so he's good in my books. I'm a big beaver fan myself, so they are amazing animals.
Yeah, I worked for a public company, and it was causing some issues. Beavers were causing some issues for this company. and one of the people that was doing stuff with the beavers put a bounty on beavers. And I saw the sign that he put up in the lunchroom there. You can't do that. You can't put a bounty on beavers. Like, you can't do that. Come on, man. Anyway, he had a stern talk.
They're just too admirable, aren't they? They've got too much respect in this society.
And this is the Bank of Canada policymakers see CUSMA review as a significant risk, and we talk about this too. The CUSMA deal is huge, right? Like, I mean, you know, like Carney says it's the best deal anybody has in the world. And it is. 85% of our trade is already covered by CUSMA. If we lose that, and how the economy is already suffering, if we lose CUSMA, we're in big trouble.
I do think, though, the reverse is also true, though obviously to a less severe extent. But if the Americans lose USMCA, as they call it, they're also in trouble. And they don't want to. We all know that, don't they? Like, they don't want to lose that. If you listen to them in their more candid moments, they tell you that they believe in what Doug Ford always talks about, this North American fortress thing. They actually believe in that and want that, but they want it on their terms, and that's what they're not getting. They want it more on their terms than it already is.
But we've talked about this, and one is, and this is the GDP numbers that we're looking at here for Canada and the U.S., and they're projecting even the United States to go higher, and Canada projecting lower. So, I mean, right now, not looking good for Canada. We've had a couple negative quarters already. I had Joseph Barbuda on here from Longway Economic Theory. I'm going to get him on again. I'm going to ask him to come back on. We talked about economic winter. And we've seen investment flee from Canada, including our fearless leader, Mark Carney, and Rosemary Barton failed to ask that question. Why did you take Brookfield to the United States? Why are most of your investments in the United States? So that's the person to ask. That's that capital flee. And that question is not being asked by maybe they think they're underpaid and they couldn't afford to do that question, $1.55 billion. Think about that. What we could do with $1.55 billion instead of funding these state broadcasts. And they make money too. They sell ads and they take Google money. They do all kinds of things to get money. And what do we get out of it? We get propaganda. That's what we get out of it.
They're also they're also beneficiaries of kind of favoritism, aren't they? Like, that's the only end of your interview that he's done, for example, did it with CBC. He endlessly praises CBC. I mean, do you think that, just that on its own, do you think that's like appropriate in a democracy that's supposed to have a free media, where the prime minister, most powerful person in the country, repeatedly praises by name one media organization, which he also funds, and he also gives special privileges to, special access to? I mean, if that was a private company, for example, you don't have to look far. Just look to America. Look at the way that people talk about Fox News and the supposed special access that Fox News gets to Donald Trump. How is it really any different with CBC? In some ways, it's considerably worse, because we're all forced to pay for it out of our taxes, so that he can have this, or the Liberal Party can have this preferred news outlet.
Yeah, we are the best undiscovered news commentary show on the internet, independent media as well. And if you like what we do, share, subscribe, tell your friends about it, get it out there to a larger audience, and help us tell the truth more, and help wake people up and shake Canada out of this economic winter that's on its way. And here's a little bit on the American economy here. Let's play this little clip here.
All right, folks, get ready for Trump's 5% economy. That's the subject of the rip. GDP, still the best overall measure of our economy. It stands for gross domestic product. It covers consumption, investment, government, and trade. For the past 25 years, it's been stuck around 2% on average. You know, for the prior 100 years, GDP growth averaged 3.5% per year. That was real prosperity for all Americans, top, middle, lower incomes. Not only prosperity, but opportunity to climb the ladder of success. Now, I think the Trump economic program of supply-side tax cuts, deregulation, drill baby drill, and free and fair reciprocal trade is capable of producing 5% GDP growth. That's right, 5%. Not every quarter, and not necessarily every year, but I think with huge business investment, including the AI boom, along with the drop in oil prices,
That's good.
which could actually get us to zero inflation.
I mean, part of what's been going on in the United States is energy. I mean, part of one of his campaign things was drill, baby, drill. And we talked about energy on this show many times, and including in the interviews or the shows I do with Renee Merrifield, former MLA. Energy is everything, and cheap, reliable energy is the most important thing to a prosperous economy. And that's what they've done in the United States. And even CNN, we're going to play this little clip here from the CNN, they're having to recognize that the price of gasoline at the pumps. This is how you return money to the people, like almost immediately. It's not through a tax break. Lower the cost of energy. They feel it in their pocket every time they go to the pump, which they have to do. Let's play this clip here.
Time for your holiday travel.
AAA says gas prices are under $3 for the first time in 4 years, and just as a record number of drivers are expected to hit the roads this week. So that's the good news. CNN's Matt Egan is here to fill us in on what's happening. So now what do we get the gas cans, we fill them up. Merry Christmas, Erica.
There you go.
Merry
Yes.
Christmas, Matt. Right? Yeah.
I don't know about that, Brianna. You don't want to drive up prices by doing that. But look, this has really been one of the feel-good stories for the economy, and on the affordability front, gas prices, they've been under control basically all year, and they're ending the year at especially low levels. So look, this is the gas price as of today, $2.86 a gallon. Not only is that 21 cents cheaper than a month ago, but this is the lowest price since April of 2021. And yeah, look, gas prices, they were low at this point last year as well, but they're even cheaper today. Now, this is especially true in the middle part of the country, right? There's about 10 states where the average price is below $2.50 a gallon, including Texas, Louisiana, Wisconsin, Iowa. The lowest gas price in the country is Oklahoma, where the average is just $2.29 a gallon. And look, this trend could continue for a bit. Gas Buddy's projecting the average on Christmas Day will be $2.79 a gallon. That would be significantly cheaper than at this point last year. It would also save Americans about $500 million collectively versus a year earlier. Now, why is this happening? Well, as usual, a lot of this has to go back to the price of crude oil, right? If you look at this point in the calendar 3 years ago, you're looking at about $79 oil. 2023, 2024 is around $70. But look where we are now, just $58 a barrel.
That's
and that's
good.
because
That's good.
there's a
So there you go. Like, I mean, energy is everything. And CNN promoting, like the low gas prices and saying like it's a Merry Christmas. It is. Because, like even air travel will get cheaper. Everything will get cheaper as energy gets cheaper. Shipping of food. We've seen it in Canada here with the carbon tax. I mean, we got a lot of stuff shipped to us, and then right at the bottom of the invoice would be your shipping costs, and underneath it would be carbon tax. And, shipping costs. Now there's an industrial carbon tax. All these taxes add to the cost of shipping goods. And in Canada, being the second largest landmass nation in the world, shipping is a big deal. Shipping goods across Canada costs a lot. And high energy prices drive inflation. There's no doubt about it. And the United States has a mandate right now to make energy as cheap as possible, to get energy wherever they can. No different than China. China is, like you said, will get energy from putting 1 million people on bicycles and running generators. They will get energy however they can. In Canada, we're about to launch second phase of climate religion. We're going to kick that off here with
it's literally climate religion as well.
with religious leaders. And some religious leaders in Canada call for a more radical approach to ditching fossil fuels. We have, I think, we rank in the top 5 for LNG, oil and gas, all that stuff. Like, we are so rich, yet we're probably the number 1 in squandered opportunity and squandered riches. And so some religious leaders are hoping to persuade their flocks to eschew fossil fuels. One of the leaders, Anglican deacon Michael Van Dusen, another Van in there, said in an interview with Canadian Press, imagine that, Canadian Press, "We care about the planet and its inhabitants. We value it as a gift to the Creator," outlining his views on global industrial policy. "We're making progress, but we're not seeing the progress fast enough. It needs to be more radical." I'll let you go now. How much of an effect can this radical and Stephen Guilbeault make on the world's carbon emissions or methane or whatever they want to preach next year? What is it? What's Canada's impact?
With it being Christmas Eve, I should try and keep the temperature down a bit, I think, and I will do my best here. But this is the Canadian Press, as you said. So this is not a quote or anything like that. Just straight up context, like background. They write, the burning of fossil fuels is changing our climate, intensifying wildfires, droughts, and floods, all that kind of thing. And then it says also it's making us poorer, cutting into Canadian budgets, from rising grocery prices to increased home insurance, and it's going to make it worse. And then they say, this is, as I say, no quote, this is just written by the reporters as fact. They say, Canada's emissions have started to come down, but not nearly at the pace studies say is consistent with averting some of the most serious climate effects. That is misinformation. That is, I mean, in the best, most generous case, I would say that's extremely misleading. It creates the impression in the minds of impressionable people that Canada, and specifically like the federal government and industries in Canada, can change the global climate. We say this basically every day now, but that's not true. I say it as calmly, as soberly as I can. It is not true that Canada can have, I mean, really not any effect. It's an effect so small that you couldn't really see it. It would be an unobservable effect. Even if Canada, as many other people have said, even if Canada disappeared, and every little bit of CO2 that Canada had ever emitted into the atmosphere was wiped out, it would have no effect, no real effect on the global temperature or on the global climate. And yet we're still being told this, to the extent that, and again, I'll be generous and say well-meaning and gullible people such as the Reverend Michael Van Dusen actually think that fossil fuels and the use of fossil fuels in Canada is destroying the planet and causing forest fires and causing floods and droughts and all kinds of horrible, evil things in Canada. They've actually got it into their heads that there's a direct causal relationship between filling your car with gas in Canada, driving it around in Canada, and then a forest fire in British Columbia in the summer. They actually think that those two things are related, even though the truth is that much closer to the truth would be that, the combined CO2 pollution of China over 50 years might contribute to that, not Canada, which is a minnow. Canada, the usual figure given is 1.5% of emissions, CO2 emissions. I mean, that even in itself, I think, is a little bit of an exaggeration. Some other people think it's less than 1%. Choose your expert kind of thing. But how sad is this? I must say, a holy man who's supposed to have as his primary interest the flourishing of mankind, let's say, and he's set out to attack fossil fuels. Can you think, I don't know, maybe you can tell me, Jim, can you think of anything that's happened in the last 500 years that's had a greater impact on human flourishing in the positive bracket than fossil fuels? Is there literally anything better or more consequential in the history of humanity than the discovery of fossil fuels for use on a mass scale when it comes to improving standards of living? Because I just can't think of a single thing.
There isn't, but one of our viewers said, and I had to laugh while you were doing your thing, said without fossil fuels, Jim's hair would be gray. Merry Christmas to you as well.
Without fossil fuels, I think it's safe to say, without fossil fuels, none of us would be alive.
No.
There wouldn't have been the capacity and the land to produce enough food to support even close to the population that we have now. So you have to think realistically, you'd be in the proportion of the population that just was never born, never existed.
In the interest of keeping
died
this
at
show,
birth.
in the interest of keeping this show on track and on time, one of the things that we're seeing, how media works, the corrupted and crippled media, they're going to start putting these stories out there a little bit at a time. They're going to start building some momentum, and because the second coming of climate change, climate religion is coming, and that's Mark Carney's going to drop the new climate agenda here for Canada, and that's going to include a lot of CCUS. We've already seen 2 American companies come to Canada to collect what Carney has called super credits, 75 cents on the dollar. So they're gonna socialize the investment so that you pay for it, 75 cents on the dollar. Imagine that if you could get your company 75 cents back on every dollar you invest. They're gonna get that for setting up these schemes, these carbon capture schemes, and they're gonna capture this carbon, put it into trucks, and truck it somewhere, and then inject it into the ground, supposedly to stay safe, and then sell those credits. They're going to privatize, obviously, the revenue. So these American companies now are going to make bank off of our energy. They're going to skin a little bit off the cat. And another big investor in CCUS, you can go look it up. You can, fact check me. Just do Brookfield CCUS, carbon capture, and you're going to see they've invested billions and billions and billions of dollars into carbon capture. And Mark Carney, go watch his UN speech and then just substitute in there, you, the taxpayer, and the investment banks that want their money back because they invested tons in carbon capture because they thought the whole world was doing this net zero. When Donald Trump won the election, it basically kiboshed the whole thing. So the only place they can go left now, and they've said it, Carbon Capture USA said it, Canada is the only place where they can sell this technology because nobody else is buying it. And then again, Justin Trudeau told Germany, Japan, South Korea, the regulars on the show will know this, that there's no future in LNG and no business case. Yet the Americans sold them LNG, all 3 of those. And there's no carbon capture in it. But Mark Carney says we need carbon capture, and you're going to see this roll out here and watch the media, how they start putting out these stories. This religious guy is just the tip of the spear as Canadian press and CBC and CTV will start to work you over and convince you that you must make sacrifices so that Brookfield and other companies like that can make scores and scores of cash while they skin the cat for carbon credits.
While nobody else, we should say, while nobody else in the world does it, so it will have no effect. Again, no effect on global temperatures, no
Merry
effect
Christmas.
on global
Merry
CO2
Christmas. Merry
emissions.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas indeed.
There you go. And here's this. This is something that, like, we're saying Merry Christmas. Many outlets will not even dare say it. But here's something here. Christmas in Dubai. And yeah, they celebrate Christmas, but in London right now, they're scared to do it. Many cities in Canada have canceled Christmas celebrations at Christmas markets.
To prevent, we should say why, to prevent attendees from being murdered by Islamists. That's why. Though that's often left out, isn't it, that little bit? But the reality is,
so if you want,
that's why. And you got people in the UAE, we should say, on that note of Islamism. You have people in the UAE, and I think including this guy, who's quite active on social media, who relentlessly attack European countries for their inability to deal with Islamism and contrast it with the United Arab Emirates approach to Islamism, which is actually considerably more sophisticated and thorough.
Yeah, so if you're into irony, you can't celebrate Christmas in the UK or Europe or in some Canadian cities. You can go to the UAE and you can celebrate it there in full style. And we'll say it over and over again. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. And in here in the Yukon, where they said that you had to do all electric, and they got -50. I used to live up north, so let's listen to this clip here and just ask yourself, what were they thinking?
We begin tonight in the Yukon. After 3 weeks of frigid temperatures, the territorial government is warning residents the power grid is nearing capacity. CBC's Callie McTavish brings us more.
The Minister of Energy, Mines and Resources says the grid is under significant strain. Yesterday, the Yukon had an all-time high power usage of 123 megawatts. Now, the grid's full max capacity is only 140 megawatts, but that number is a theoretical number, and it includes the use of renewable energy sources, which are not being used to their full capacity at the moment. Now, this means that the territory is at risk of power outages. A number of blackouts have already taken place, one in Whistlebend, Whitehorse's newest neighborhood, and also in Haines Junction, where power went out for several hours yesterday afternoon. The Minister of Energy, Mines and Resources, Ted Laking, is asking folks to please reduce their energy usage. That means unplugging TVs, toasters, whatever you don't need, as well as having an emergency preparedness kit on hand in case blackouts happen. Callie McTavish, CBC News, Whitehorse.
And it doesn't look like...
No.
Is there a bigger failure in the modern Western country? Is there a bigger failure that can be attributed to the political class, the leadership class, than allowing a blackout to either occur or to be possible? I just can't. I mean, other than through like a tornado or something like that. If a blackout occurs because you just haven't managed supply adequately, I feel like that should almost be. There should be something in the Constitution that allows you just to impeach those people immediately. I could not imagine failure on a grander scale than that. Failure to provide electricity to the people that you purport to rule.
In a nation that is one of the most energy-rich nations in the world, these are people that will suffer in the cold. I've lived in the north. I've lived Thompson, Manitoba. I've lived in high-level Alberta. Unplug stuff, like they didn't even use a light on her camera there. You know what I mean? Her face wasn't lit while they reported it. It's like you have no idea what 50 below feels like. Like, absolutely, an absolute failure by the governments of the last 10 years. An absolute failure in an energy-rich nation that has suppressed our natural wealth, our economy. This should be played over and over again for these people as they start touting climate religion again. The policies that benefit the few at the expense of the many. And there's somebody saying,
but maybe they should call up that deacon and say, "I'm really cold, deacon. It's -50 outside. What can I do?" Maybe he can explain what the fine people of Yukon can do, because obviously fossil fuels are off the menu, aren't they? So I think he'll provide some spiritual guidance for them.
It's shameful. It's absolutely shameful that people will suffer. And then still, where's the documents for Stephen Guilbeault, who allegedly funneled over $200 million into his green scheme companies? They still won't release the documents. How many people have profited off of green schemes in the United States and in Canada that have shown no results? I mean, I can name tons of them in the United States. They just won't release the documents here in Canada. Brookfield, go do the research on it. Brookfield, making money on oil and gas in other parts of the world, yet suppressing oil and gas here in Canada. Mark Carney was the economic advisor and testified in the committee hearing to block the Northern Gateway Pipeline, That's the guy leading our nation right now. Those are facts. Those are absolute facts.
It's so sad, isn't it? And a lot of, this is not necessarily true of Brookfield, but so many of these activists as well who've made huge amounts of money from intermittent power, like wind turbines and solar panels and so on, they've been extremely and quite irrationally, I would argue, hostile to nuclear power, which is just, talking about religion and God and all that, is a gift from the heavens. Nuclear power is just so fantastic. Marvelous technology, and yet is talked down all the time, spoken of as like a death trap, and Chernobyl is brought up and things like that. That should interest a lot of people. I think that a lot of these lobbies that have made so much money from intermittent renewables have been really vocally hostile to nuclear power, which now, in this decade now, a lot of leaders have finally discovered, like, oh yeah, nuclear power, like that's what we should have done. Just a little bit late.
Isn't it the most telling is that the people that scream against even what we talk about that scream against it were willing to sacrifice people at the altar of this government. They don't care. They don't care what happens to people. Like, you watch this and you have no empathy for what's happening in the Yukon. It's just amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And you know, like, how many Canadians
gotta crack
right
a few
now,
eggs if you want to make an omelet.
Yeah, just people need to sacrifice more so that the elites can have the run of the world. And here's how they're running our departments here. The Department of Employment last year disciplined 629 employees for misconduct, from absenteeism, theft, and fraud. Why not? It's only a federal government. Disclosure was intended to show what was happening and wrongdoing misconduct reported. Of the 629 employees disciplined for breaching of values and ethics code for the public sector, a total of 14 were fired. 80 others failed probation, and 223 were suspended without pay or received written reprimands. How many of those do you think won't get their bonus? Because it's bonus time in Ottawa. And it says 90 to 100% of people get their bonuses no matter what. And they don't even like performance reviews because that just doesn't go with their thing. Remember that efficiency thing? They wanted to do a little bit of an efficiency check, and it said that doesn't really work with the federal government.
Sorry, no, we can't do that. Don't forget as well, that woman, talk about absenteeism, that woman that just didn't turn up to work but still got her bonus.
Yeah. And then this one here is our friend. We talked about her many times, our space ace here in Canada, Dr. Mona Nemer. She is Canada's chief science advisor. She worked up an excuse to spend more than $34,000 on a UFO survey that no parliamentarian asked for. That's what records show. Why not, right? She makes, just under 400 grand a year. That doesn't include the bonuses, of course. That's just her base salary.
It's so, this
you don't even know what to say,
so
right?
Every time we do this, I can't keep a straight face.
She has 7 employees working on involved in the project, and that was to find out what the stigma attached to reporting UFOs, not on the UFOs themselves, just in how you report a UFO. You don't want any stigma attached to it, right?
To curb disinformation and prevent conspiracy theories. That's what it's for. I don't know what conspiracy theories are they? Well, Area 51, like X-Files.
And then somebody put in the comments there, like, why not give the $34,000 to Canada is now connected to our former prime minister is now connected to an astronaut. She could ask Katy Perry. She's been up in space, and you can ask if there's any aliens up there instead of wasting our tax dollars. Every time they waste tax dollars, they're taking food off your table. They're taking food off your table, and they're spending it like this. $400,000.
Oh, they're literally, as Justin Trudeau did, unbelievably, denying a military veteran a wheelchair that works. They're doing things like that. They're making these. At some point, the accountant will be satisfied, as you know well. The Excel sheet will be rationalized at some point. So something will be taken from one column and put into another. And yeah, when you look at it like that, it stops being a joke, doesn't it? And it starts being rather depressing.
So her 400 grand salary, I want just to reiterate this point. She assigned 7 employees to work on UFOs, according to, 7 employees to work on UFOs in Canada. So this is Canada's X-Files. This is our Mulder, I guess. I don't know who Scully is in this mess here, but this makes you sigh. The Mexican embassy is fed up with Canada. Remember when we were Mark Carney said that we're going to strengthen a new era of cooperation with Mexico. Mexico, not so much. Mexican companies approached the embassy and inquired about establishing their businesses in Canada, including in sectors as diverse as construction, finance, food processing, etc. Nonetheless, many of them expressed concern about excessive requirements, cost, or red tape. And it said Ottawa is so dysfunctional that Mexican diplomats had difficulty getting basic data here. We can't get it. We can't get FOI. We asked how much money they spent with Meta that they said was the devil, that they were going to ban. They banned the spending on Meta, and then Mark Carney and the Liberals decided they needed to spend to win the election. They spent over $5 million from January to March. And we asked for an update on the number, and they said they can't give it to us. Why not? They can give it to us in 2026.
Very transparent.
It's difficult to present a full picture of foreign direct investment in originating Mexico, as there's no official registry in Canada, which was supposed to happen. While in Mexico, the National Registry of Foreign Investment provides publicly available lists of all foreign companies doing business they can do in Mexico, not in Canada, and all Mexican companies with foreign investment. That's the report. That's what the report said. Mexico's figured it out. Canada, nope. Nope.
But it's also this idea that Canada is a more closed-off economy than Mexico. That's kind of the implication of a lot of this criticism, isn't it?
But listen,
and that is completely insane. If that is indeed true,
listen to
I'm not
this
sure
tout.
that is true, but it's mad.
Here's the tout. Canada and Mexico are entering a new era of cooperation. That's from Mark Carney himself. We are elevating our partnerships. Okay. In reality, Roberto Velasco Alvarez, Mexico's Undersecretary for North America, testified at a November 26th Senate hearing that Canada was not the foremost for investors. Mexican companies have grown used to simply looking at the United States when they look north. Too much bureaucracy.
That's just, I mean, that should be embarrassing for a lot of people in Ottawa, but I'm not so sure it will be. But look, Canada, in so many ways, we joke about it, don't we? The lack of transparency and things like that, and the special interest groups, the lobby groups. Dairy is the most hilarious, but they're not the only one. All of these professional organizations and these provincial organizations that limit mobility, they limit trade. In so many ways, Canada is a really closed-off economy, isn't it? Certainly when you look at the United States, which is just like open for business. They do everything they can to facilitate commerce, don't they? And the movement of people and capital. It's you have to wonder how much longer we can persist with this sclerotic system.
Well, Dominic LeBlanc said it in an interview recently. I think we had it on, was it last week's show? Where he was saying 12 years is too long to get approvals. 12 years. Like, I was in the mining industry. It's 20 to go from putting a drill in the ground to getting a mine permitted. Like, yeah, it's too long. Like, and then contrast that, again, here's the contrast for you. This is absolutely amazing. Cameco, one of Canada's better companies here, Cameco, a uranium company based in Saskatchewan. And Cameco and Brookfield, another Canadian company, one of the bigger Canadian companies, Mark Carney chaired, has signed a deal with the Americans to build 8 nuclear reactors in the United States. How many did they say they were going to build in Canada? 0.
4, wasn't it?
No, they're in the Westinghouse. Westinghouse.
Yeah, Westinghouse. That's different, isn't it? Yeah.
0. 2 Canadian companies. Where did they go to build them? But where's the reporter? Where's, what's her name? Rosie there, Russian Rosie, had a chance to ask Mark Carney, why is Cameco and Brookfield building 8 nuclear reactors in the United States and none in Canada? If it's Canada, build strong Canada, or invest in Canada, we're going to make Canada, we're going to be our own best customer, we're going to do all these things. If we're going to be our own best customer, why is 2 of our best companies, Cameco and Brookfield, spending all their time and energy in the United States of America? That's a good question, Rosie. I believe that the Russians are funding the CBC. They may well be doing it.
You've got as much evidence as she's got whenever she talks about Russia.
Just throw the poop back. Like, she throws poop on the wall, and we just throw the poop back. And I would believe what the CBC is doing to Canada by not being honest. I mean, you could see why they would fund the CBC, just to keep the misinformation, disinformation at a high level. Why not? If I was on Polymarkets, I'd probably bet on that before I bet on the Russians were contributing to the Freedom Convoy. Here's another one from Haudenosaunee Blacklock's Labor Minister, Patty Ajou, undermined constitutional rights with their frequent use of strike bans, says the nation's largest pilots association. The union, in submission to Commons Human Resources Committee, said strike bans had now become commonplace. Yeah, they used them a lot. They used it a lot. The Liberals, who are supposed to stand up for the working class, including the NDP, right? Remember NDP was all about the working class, right? Government intervention to end labor disputes in the federal sector has now become commonplace. Employers now expect the government to intervene and are no longer interested in bargaining in good faith. They're investigating the use of Section 107 of the Canada Labour Code to end lawful strikes and force unions into binding arbitration. Had you and her predecessor invoked the clause 8 times in 15 months. You know, like, it's like when they used that, even for the trucker convoy, when they imposed the Emergencies Act, and then they found out later that it was abuse. They're going to find out later on this one that it was abuse too. But hey, do it, hide the information forever, make sure it goes away, and then, you know, like in 3 years, they'll say, well, that's old news.
Well, it'll be minimized. It just won't be looked at. It won't be reported on. And Blacklock's will go crazy for it, but not many people read Blacklocks, unfortunately. So, you know, what's the problem? Like they look at that as like, well, we win.
Give yourself a Christmas present and go to Blacklocks, subscribe. I think it's about $315 a year. You're going to find more information on Blacklocks, and we're lucky enough to get to use this stuff here, than you're going to find on CBC. You'll probably find in a week on Blacklocks that you're not going to find on CBC in a year. Like, it's just absolutely crazy. We're going to, as soon as we're done with some of these stories, we're going to go check CBC and see what they're trying to tell you today, because it isn't going to be that. Here's another one from Holly Doan. A phone call cost the Canada Revenue Agency $879,000 in tax abuse dispute, according to evidence in federal court. The judge ruled the conversation between tax lawyer and dismissive collections officer amounted to breach of procedural fairness. I mean, this just goes on and on and on, right? I won't get into this.
But this could, how many other phone calls could this kind of thing apply to if they were tested in court? You know, we recently, what is an internal survey or something, found out that only 18%, was it about 18%? I can't remember the exact figure.
Was accurate.
But about 18% of calls contain fully accurate information. Like the rest are just have some kind of error in them.
And then this is one that frustrates many people. And Quebec's pushed back on this, but the rest of Canada still deals with it. A former university football player who sexually assaulted 2 women has been sentenced to just 2 years in prison because he's black and was feeling intense pressure around the time of attacks. I hope they explain that to the 2 women. I hope they understand that.
Well, I mean, how many times have we said it as well? Like this is completely by the book. It is on the statute books. This is the law in Canada. That if you're a member of a certain identity group, you will not be punished in the same way that people who aren't a member of these recognized groups would be. I mean, some of the things that I read, some of the stories I read, because I read a lot of the Indigenous press, as it's called, First Nations press, a lot of that stuff. Every single case, pretty much, every single criminal case involves a sort of extenuating circumstances where they say, well, I'm First Nations and I'm dealing with intergenerational trauma and things like that. And they get, like, they do actually get softer sentencing as a consequence. So it's built into the law. This is not equality under the law. Obviously, we don't live in a country where we have equality before the law. It depends who you are. That the law will treat you differently depending on your DNA.
And here's another one. Osman Azov was charged with sexual assault with a weapon, attempted kidnapping, illegal possession of a firearm after he was caught allegedly trying to kidnap and rape women off the streets of Toronto with 2 other women, released on bail.
What? I've seen a lot of things, man, but that's like, what? I just can't process that.
Well,
I'm sorry. Certainly not in a Santa hat.
We talked about some stories that should make the CBC. Let's go over and take a look at what the CBC is covering today.
Wow. They have actually got the Yukon story, which is a big story, though I'm sure they take a very interesting slant on
Take
it.
on it, how the climate change is doing. I thought it was supposed to be global
Probably.
warming, but obviously this is global cooling.
How reliance on evil fossil fuels has put Yukon in trouble. There'll be something like that, I'm sure. So John A. Macdonald was erased from public spaces. Now there's a movement to bring him back.
I don't see any of the stories that we covered.
Elf on the shelf. I mean, they got the priorities right, I think.
Yeah, Canada's strongest when we're united. Where's the decision on an oil pipeline? Where is that? Where is that? Where is that? Anyway, there you go. $1.55 billion. You tell me, did we cover off more that's important than the CBC has covered in their front page there, the stuff they want you to read? You tell me.
They've got a little bit late on some stories, but they're talking about the PBO. Like, they do get some things in there, but it's like if you keep on scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, you find some interesting stories. But who does that, you know?
So again, Wealthsimple, we've recommended Wealthsimple tons of times, and I recommend it again. Wealthsimple, especially to kids. Instead of buying that expensive coffee every morning, $10 coffee, buy $10 fractional stock, no transactional fees, fractional stock, pick a company, I don't care what company you buy, and then start learning about investing, because that is the future, investing. And because that money will work for you when you're asleep. And Wealthsimple offers no transactional fees, which is amazing, because even like the CIBC is still $7 in and $7 out. So if you buy $10 worth of stock, it almost has to triple before you make $1. And this also allows you to buy Bitcoin. It also allows you to buy gold. You can run TFSAs in there, RSPs, FHSAs, and obviously a checking account. They've got a credit card they're starting. Why wouldn't you use Wealthsimple? Banks are raking in record profits. And we're going to put a link in the comments. You can use that link, open an account, and there's $25 right there. If you use that link, you get $25, just like that, for opening an account. And like I said, TFSA, if you haven't maxed out your TFSA, that's the first thing you do. That's the only tax-free thing you can get here in Canada. And if you haven't bought a home yet, an FHSA makes a whole lot of sense. But there's your Christmas present. Wealthsimple. Big Red returned to Chris Barber. And here's your Christmas present from us as well. We're going to play this clip first, though. Remember our friend Justin Trudeau, because we need him at Christmas, as him and Katy Perry, the astronaut and the drama teacher, tour the world telling you how good they are and how sanctimonious they are. Let's listen in on this clip, though.
The small fringe minority of people who are on their way to Ottawa or who are holding unacceptable views that they're expressing.
Guys, sending love from Renfrew, Ontario. Go get them, boys and girls.
I'm Tim. I'm Tony. I'm Maggie. And we're from Manila, Alberta. Thank you for fighting for our freedoms.
Love you guys. You guys are the best, and waiting for you in Ottawa.
Thank you for fighting for us truckers. Thank you for fighting us for truckers. It's Riley in Brooklyn, and we just wanted to say that we appreciate your loyalty for standing up for our freedom. To all you truckers out there, be safe. Have a good night, and I'll talk to you tomorrow in a Big Ten.
There's a lot more of that. And I remember when we were doing these stories, we were called into question a lot because we interviewed a lot of the Okanagan people that were out there for the truckers rally and the truckers. And we said we were destroying this country by interviewing that. They were given no voice. And we do have Chris Barber on at 1:30 today on the live stream, along with John Carpe, who I've had on many times. You can go back. John Carpe from the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. They did win this case. They did get Big Red back. So we're going to talk about the case and his return of his truck, his means to make income. And again, this is this Freedom Convoy was an international story and still talked about a lot of places how Canada abused people in a peaceful protest that basically had noise violations and parking violations. And then they used the full might of the Emergencies Act and in all Roman-style horses to trample them at the end. And also, the CBC worked up the disinformation machine with Rosie Barton. Came out almost immediately when they raised like $1 million in like a day, I think it was. They raised $10 million, I think, right away and said that that was Russian money. Turns out after it wasn't Russian money. I don't know how Rosie Barton got that it was Russian money. So we should always just say that to Rosie Barton. Everything she says is Russian disinformation. Just give it back to her. And they put heads on sticks when they closed bank accounts. They closed the bank account of a bakery in Victoria for a $250 donation, froze her bank accounts, and I think it was the Royal Bank, one of the Canadian banks, went along with it. And if you get your bank account frozen, how do you operate a business? And then the media willingly trotted out that story to make sure all Canadians knew what was coming for them. That was the equivalent of the King days, where you put a few heads on sticks at the gate to let people know what happens when you disobey the King.
And, you know, a little brief excerpt of Justin Trudeau there. I mean, we have to highlight, don't we, how strange it was. Let's as neutral as possible. How strange it was the way he reacted to that, and the way he it was just immediately hostile. There was no attempt to kind of recognize that these people were suffering. It was a genuine movement, and they wanted to deliver their petition, as it were, to the Lord of the Land. And there was just no attempt. Even before they got to Ottawa, they were being defamed by Trudeau, and he was saying he wouldn't meet with them. Just, I at the time I remember thinking, I don't understand this from like the perspective of leadership. That was not a good or strong leadership, really, was it? It was such a strange moment. But I suppose it was during the COVID madness. Maybe that would be Justin Trudeau's only defense, is that he kind of lost his mind like everybody else did during that sad period.
Big Red was seen as the kind of like the symbolic, their flag, really. That truck became a symbol for the Freedom Convoy. And that's why years later, the government still pursued seizure of that vehicle, even though, like, I mean, the abuse of power and privilege was proven over and over again during this thing. And a lot of the stuff was trumped up, even, you know, like that fire that they used to say that they were lighting Ottawa on fire, all these things. And the media was complicit in this. And then, you know, some reporters were actually going up and getting VIN numbers and then doxing companies. And that was the reporters doing this. Instead of questioning why, the reporters became the legs and the voice for the Liberal government.
They also, I believe, though my memory is a bit vague here, this is not a fresh memory, but I'm fairly sure they also targeted police officers, didn't they? Ottawa Police and RCMP, who had expressed favourable attitudes to the truckers.
Anybody that had dissent, right? They went after anybody with dissent. They went after us. Because we did stories on the truckers. And
but that was a good reminder. Like Henry Kissinger, he was alive then, actually, wasn't he? I don't know if he was observing, but he would have recognized that. It would have been a bit of a treat for Henry Kissinger, because he would say, look, that's it. That's real power. That's how things happen. And the real power was held by the federal government, and they crushed a kind of rebellion, or whatever you want to call it, a protest of their own citizens, and they crushed it brutally as you possibly can in the 21st century in a country like Canada.
We're going to do some BC news here.
Coming to you live from the Now Media Newsroom.
Is Aaron gunning for the Premier's job? That's the big question. There you go, Aaron Gunn. New polls show him in the lead, and he still hasn't made up his mind. New polls from Main Street and Palace saying that, Aaron Gunn would do well as the new Premier of British Columbia. I saw a poll from Main Street as well. I think it was today for Pierre Poilievre that showed him with a commanding lead. I believe it was Main Street. Was that the poll?
He was talking. Yeah, he was talking about this poll with Brian Lilly, and I'm not sure what it was. It's what I think it was one of the kind of lesser polling companies.
I think
the
it was
ones
Main
that
Street.
don't,
I'm pretty sure it was Main Street.
Right.
And then, and Aaron Gunn still hasn't made a decision. He's one of these things where he's waiting for the people to pull him into the race. But I think how many people? This will heat up here as we head into right after the Christmas break. This will heat up. I'm sure Pierre Poilievre not wanting to lose Aaron Gunn as well.
It's a weird one though, because like he wouldn't be my obvious choice, I must say, because he's very young, isn't he? And not only is he young, but he's also people like to pretend that he's some kind of extremist or something like that. He's really not. Pretty middle of the road guy.
I think he got fame there when he did that video, Vancouver's Dying.
Yeah, he was defamed like everybody that anybody that talks about Vancouver in a negative way basically is just defamed endlessly. But he was attacked a lot for that, wasn't he? That's the sort of root, I think, of those claims that he's some kind of nutbag. He's definitely not. He's definitely like basically a centrist, I would say, though he probably wouldn't like to hear that. But yeah, he's young. He doesn't really have any experience, and I don't know, like when David Eby is your opponent, he looks a bit like a kind of lost child sometimes, doesn't he? Maybe it would be better to have somebody with a lot of experience. I don't know, but he's certainly popular anyway, isn't he? Among the base.
Well, here's a little clip here from Mr. Eby sporting the Christmas tie. He's doing better than me on the Christmas tie and talking about the thing that is ripping BC apart right now.
As a result of the decisions that we've seen recently, we're going to have to go and amend the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, as well as the Interpretation Act, to make it clear what we meant to do with that legislation, which was to set up a schedule and a plan with First Nations on how we were going to work through this in a systemic way.
Can the attorney confirm then that
That's
the
probably good. Yeah.
definitive...
I mean, they've asked them to recall legislature to get some certainty here in British Columbia, but David Eby, not in a rush. And he says he wants to take his time and get it right. But then, like some of the lawyers that are experts in Aboriginal law on that, saying he sure was in a rush when he was doing the other stuff. He doesn't want to seem to be in a rush now. But there's a lot of pots on the stove for the BC NDP that are boiling over. Crime and safety, the decriminalization that even Eby had said himself was a failure. Forestry falling apart here. And there's a lot of things that I just interviewed the NDP forest minister. There's a lot of things that we have to fix ourselves. Never mind the softwood lumber tariffs. There's stuff that we can fix, access to fiber. Healthcare, we said, again, 100 Mile House closed again today. I believe we just put that story up. 100 Mile House, if you go on KelownaNow.com, you're going to find that story. 100 Mile House emergency room closed again. That one's seen a lot of closures this year. As we end the year. Deficits, flee of investment capital, uncertainty. We're seeing it here in Kelowna having the highest unemployment rate now. Construction industry cratering here, one of the strongest employers. Lots of problems in British Columbia.
But it's the engine of the Canadian economy, apparently, according to David Eby.
The touts. We got lots on those touts, and we're going to show you. So when they say stuff, you can use your critical thinking. You can use your common sense. And do you believe it? Because right now, a lot of the touts are just that. And the sad thing is we have a media in Canada that's crippled and corrupted that will not hold them accountable because they're at the begging bowl. And we talked about it yesterday. The two things that hold government accountable, one is the PBO's office, which looks like he just got kneecapped because he's come out and apologized for what he said, stupefying, shocking, unsustainable. Now he's saying he shouldn't use that language because, he wants that job full time. And he said he shouldn't be a watchdog. He should just more of like an independent party. Like, it's a watchdog. That's what accountants do. And then media, which is supposed to be the biggest thing that holds democracies accountable, crippled and corrupted here in Canada. I mean, you can attest to that. You were a journalist in the UK, the standards here compared to there, or in the United States for that matter, these politicians would not survive in the UK or in the United States if they had to stand up to the questioning that is afforded to them down there. Donald Trump, they say, is a threat to democracy. He stands in front of all kinds of reporters for 3 hours at a time, almost every day. Almost every day, the access to him compared to Joe Biden, like he probably does more in a week than Joe Biden did in 4 years. And it's just, if you want accountability, Mark Carney provides, I think that one interview with Rosie Barton in 9 months was one of the only long form interviews that I can think of in Canada that he provided. That's it, one. He takes a couple questions from the podium when he was here in Kelowna. We were allowed one question with zero follow-up. One question we were allowed. We were going to ask about the BC Fairs. We thought somebody else would ask, but of course all the other corrupted and crippled media did not ask that question. You know, Rosie Barton, she has him there and she asks, what do you think of the job? How are you liking the job? Like, what is that? Like, there's so many questions that should be asked.
But I mean, one of the questions, maybe even the first question that she should have asked Mark Carney is, why the hell don't you sit for interviews in this country? What's going on? What kind of an operation are you running here where you just completely ignore the press? Like that might be the first question if you think of it like from a journalist, from the only journalist that gets to sit down with them for any prolonged period of time in Canada. She really should have asked that question.
Well, Merry Christmas for the BC segment, and we're going to head into our international stuff. We got some really good stuff on that, some funnier stuff here, and again, a glimpse of what they do to you in misinformation, disinformation. But let's head into the international section here.
Live from the Now Media Newsroom.
So here you go. This Secretary of State and have started to ban, and they banned 5 Europeans. Here's GB News talking about for censoring big tech companies. Let's listen to your friend at GB. Do you know this fella here?
I do. Well, I don't know him personally, but we went to the same journalism college, and he was the year before me, and I lived in the same bedroom in the same house that he lived in, but I've never met him.
Let's play the
clip. He was the talk of town. They loved him.
Right, some big breaking news for you now from the United States. The State Department announced Tuesday it was barring 5 Europeans, Tuesday being today, of course. It announced 5 Europeans it accused of leading efforts to pressure US tech firms to censor or suppress American viewpoints. Secretary of State Marco Rubio didn't name those he said fell foul of new visa policies announced in May to restrict the entry of foreigners deemed responsible for the censorship of protected speech in the US. He identified them only as radical activists and who weaponise non-governmental organisations. Long story short, the US has banned 5 people for not complying with their vision of America. And we've got some breaking news now. The names are here. Where are they? They include the likes of... so, first of all, they're identified by Sarah Rogers, who is the US Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy, in a series of posts on social media. They include the former European Union Commissioner and leaders of organisations that address so-called digital hate. So the 5 named are Imran Ahmed, who is the Chief Executive of the Centre for Countering Digital Hate, Josephine Ballon and Anna-Lena von Holdenberg, who are the leaders of Hate Aid. A German organisation is Hate Aid. The former EU Commissioner Thierry Breton, who was responsible for digital affairs, and Claire Melford, who runs the Global Disinformation Index. Under the US Immigration and Nationality Act, those targeted will generally be barred from entering the US, and some may face removal proceedings if they're already in the country. I can think of some other organisations with the word hate in them who could be banned, but I won't get into that.
Good.
So yeah.
Wasn't that guy that the UE Commissioner Thierry Breton, isn't that the one that went after Elon Musk and was going to put him in jail? That's the fella right there.
Thierry Breton, yeah. He was the EU Commissioner, I think, so he was like an extremely high-ranking official. But this is like, I just find it, when I read their names, the names of the organizations that they create, I just can't help but laugh. It's so funny, aren't they? Like, what was that one there? The Organization for Countering Digital Hate. It's like, They're almost like saying, it's almost like in the Middle Ages, it's like people walking around saying like, we are the community against Satan or something. And it's like, oh, well, can't argue with that then. Brilliant. You must be such a good person. It's such a low grade effort, isn't it? It's like, I must say, I've literally never been persuaded by these stupid organizations that give themselves names like that. I mean, what that does to me is it immediately triggers my like suspicion, my skepticism massively, and I'm just thinking like, who the hell are you? You're trying to put this costume on, but what are your real motives? What do you really want? And in the case of all these organizations, what they really want is to push an authoritarian progressive agenda, and they've been called out by the Americans, and now they're crying foul and they're saying, "Oh, we're being censored, we're being persecuted." It's like Joseph McCarthy. It's like, all right, yeah. Now you know how lots of people in Europe can look at you. That's what they consider you to be.
And we have it in Canada. You and I've talked many times. The Anti-Hate Network here in Canada, which was funded none other than by our own government, and to tune almost $1 million. And then when Stephen Guilbeault when the information was pressed under his nose, he's like, "Oh, we have to stop that." But they didn't stop it as they were funneling hundreds of thousands of dollars into this anti-hate network. We have the same thing going on here in Canada. So wonder when they'll make the list.
Well, the thing is as well, they've been told that they've been told they can't come to the United States, and that means that at least one of these people, the British guy Imran Ahmed, and I think also Claire Melford, but Imran Ahmed for sure is based in Washington, so he's theoretically now he's going to be deported. He's going to be turfed. So he had some real consequences, but the rest of them, it's not such a big deal unless they had plans to go to Disneyland or something next year. But the Americans, and she mentions it, this woman here, Sarah Rogers, who's some sort of minor official under Secretary of State. Well, it's actually not a minor official, that's quite a big job. But she mentioned here, we didn't invoke the Magnitsky Act, or however you pronounce that name, which is like that's like the real serious sanctions that they can pull out. But kind of the fact that she mentioned that suggests that like that's potentially going to be next.
They've looked in the drawer. They've opened the drawer and they've said,
Yeah, and if the Americans do that, the Magnitsky, again, whatever it is, I think it is Magnitsky, isn't it? If they pull that out and actually use some of the powers they have under that act, you are like mincemeat. You're dead. They can destroy your life, can absolutely destroy your life in, a second. You're done. This is what like loads of the Russians and Venezuelans and all these dodgy characters, Chinese, this is what they dread. This is what they hate, because it prevents them having access to their money or doing business or doing like anything. They can't go anywhere. They become like ostracized globally. So the shadow kind of hangs over these people. But I think, all in all, this is part of the Americans going to bat for like the tech companies once again. They've shown again and again and again that they'll do that. So when you mentioned Canada there, that's very important, because Canada is in the sights because of the Online News Act, Online Streaming Act, and other things. Canada's next up for sure. In fact, I'm quite surprised that there isn't a Canadian listed here. But this is a shot across the bows. This is like, this is firing the bullets in the air in the bank lobby from the Americans saying, don't do anything stupid. Like you've all been warned.
We're going to reach out on the Online News Act. We've reached out before to the State Department. They responded. We're going to reach out and see if we can get an interview in this coming year too on the Online News Act. And a few other things. We've got lots of big plans for 2026. But there's a lot of this stuff that goes on here in Canada, the misinformation, the disinformation, and all that kind of stuff. And here's a little clip of how this works, the Democrats, the Liberals, and that stuff. It's kind of like the same playbook. But listen to this clip here from Elizabeth Warren. Their version, or I guess a higher version of Elizabeth May. Elizabeth May you would call probably like the Walmart version of Elizabeth Warren. She probably just opens up the playbook, sees what Elizabeth Warren is saying, and then just kind of like spews it out. But here's Elizabeth Warren on an interview here.
Comes in and basically starts the dumbest trade war in the history of this country. This is going to be about potentially millions of people losing their jobs. It's going to be about millions of people losing their savings, many of people losing their retirement security, and at the same time taking on even higher costs for everything they buy. So that's going to push us in potentially to foreclosures or people being pushed out of their apartments. You know, I remember this from 2008 and how long it took us to dig our way out. And to this day, there are families, there are communities that still haven't recovered. Recessions can be all those fancy charts and graphs, but at the end of the day, people feel them one person at a time, and they can be devastating.
Reminded me of Bonnie Henry, where she was trying to tell you, just nice and softly, how the world was coming to an end because you dared go outside. So, you know. There's Jen Psaki there.
Very softly. She was like a children's author reading a book or something, wasn't she? She's like, good night.
There's Jen Psaki there, the former press secretary for the Biden administration, saying nothing to challenge Elizabeth Warren there. And all that stuff turned out to be bollocks, as you would say in English terms. Nothing. Again, fear-mongering and driving hate and disinformation. The people that scream about misinformation and disinformation. And here's another one that you put in here.
Circle back.
Circle back, yeah, that's Jen Psaki. Yeah, the other one
she
was
loved
worse,
to
though.
circle
the
back.
other one
didn't
was
she?
worse, though. The other press secretary that followed, like the amount of lying that's from that pulpit of lies is what you would call it there. The U.S. condemns a UK after a woman who silently prays outside an abortion clinic charged. On another front, the same war, American government has condemned the British prosecutors for charging a woman who was arrested for silently praying outside an abortion clinic. How did they know she was praying silently? That was protected by a legal buffer zone. Charging Isabel, it said, and the State Department said the U.S. supports Isabel and all those who risk persecution for defending life, faith, and freedom. The Americans are, like, a lot of people want the First Amendment. Lots of people in Canada think they have a First Amendment right. They believe it because we are influenced by American television. They believe they have a First Amendment right. I interviewed Lisa Bildy, another constitutional lawyer. She said, you know, America exports all its culture wars that we tend to fight. You know, they push them out there, you know, whether that's on, you know, like abortion or different things. And then they think they have First Amendment rights for freedom of speech. You don't in Canada. We have our Charter of Rights, which is kind of like guide rails. And then the government here continues to compress. That's why I have John Carpe on all the time. We continue with the new bill. It's compress Canadians' right in freedom of speech. Because they like to put the word hate speech, misinformation, disinformation. And here's a lady in the UK for praying silently.
These buffer zones are backed by the Liberals, though. I mean, I can't even remember if they passed that law, but they, as usual, they follow Britain in almost every regard, the Liberal Party. And they want this around schools and synagogues and things like that. That's how they, you know, that's how they sell it to people. But I mean, the same is true for a lot of things, really, like the Online Safety Act and all that stuff. The Liberals are absolutely adamant that they will copy the British and make all the same mistakes that the British have made. But here are the Americans saying, you know, don't do that. Like, there will be consequences. Don't do it. J.D. Vance has said it. He couldn't have said it any more clearly. J.D. Vance said, we protect Europe militarily. And he didn't say this, but in many other ways as well. But we protect Europe militarily. But if you don't share our values anymore, then what's the point of protecting you? Why would we do that? And this applies very much to the British. If the British are going to arrest and charge people, the British police and the British prosecutors are going to arrest and charge people for praying inside of their own heads while standing near an abortion clinic. So, you know, you look at that, you think, so what is the US Air Force doing there then? What is the US Navy doing patrolling European seas? What is the point of protecting these people if they aren't civilized in even the most basic way, according to what the Americans would consider civilization? Just like, bye-bye. And not only that, but it's civilization that Europe invented as well, which they've now turned their backs on.
And here's I think, again, the world dodged a bullet. The world dodged a bullet by mere like a millimeters, inch, whatever. This guy could be right now the vice president of the United States. So listen to this disinformation. He's talking about, this is how they generate hate. He's talking about the most consequential person on this planet. Listen to what he has to say here. This was a while back. This is showing you some of the stuff they say.
Saying on my
We're going to get it here.
Saying on my phone, I don't know, some of you know this on the iPhone, they've got that little stock app. I added Tesla to it to give me a little boost during the day. 225 and dropping. So, and if you own one, we're not blaming you. You can take dental floss and pull the Tesla thing off, you know, and take out, just telling you. Saying on my phone,
That's
I don't know,
good.
some of you know this.
That's good. There's a guy that's leading a state that has some of the biggest fraud discovered, that actually it might be the Somalia fraud there might be bigger than the whole country of Somalia's GDP. And also Tesla at that same time employed thousands and thousands of American people. And it is one of the United States' most profitable and most like a flagship company for the United States of America, and one of the most consequential people on this planet. And this guy is inciting hate. He's called him a fascist. He's called him a Nazi. And this is the same guy that has said that calling, I think Trump called him a retard. I'm not saying defending that, but you know, like saying that leads to hate and violence. No, what you do is leads to hate and violence. When you call somebody a fascist, that gives somebody an excuse to kill you, because, you know, it's just like.
But I mean, just cheering on the failure of an American company, it's not good luck, is it? Just purely in terms of political strategy, that's not a smart thing to do, especially like a top 10 company like Tesla. You know, countries like China, Japan, the Europeans, they would literally kill to have a company like that in their countries. You know, but then here we have this clown that could have been the vice president cheering its failures. It's almost beyond belief, isn't it?
Well, here's the person that could have been the president of the United States. She says, "How dare you say Merry Christmas?" But we're going to play that, and we're going to say Merry Christmas over and over and over again. Here you go. Donald Trump said Merry Christmas. That's all he said on his tweet there, and this is her reaction to Merry Christmas.
And when we all sing happy tunes and sing Merry Christmas and wish each other Merry Christmas, these children are not going to have a Merry Christmas. How dare we speak Merry Christmas? How dare we? And when we all...
All right, Greta. Merry
Well,
Christmas.
she's more of a Kwanzaa celebrant, isn't she? That's what she famously or infamously said, even though she probably doesn't even know what Kwanzaa is. But that was one of her many wise statements.
I don't know what it is either, so there you go.
Yeah.
Trump making a lot of noise.
Basically, what she was trying to do was bolster her credentials with African American voters, because it's an African American thing. But she isn't African American, obviously. I think she's part Jamaican, part Indian. But it was, you know, it was one of the many instances in which she revealed herself to be somewhat inauthentic.
I liked when she changed accents depending who she was speaking to.
But you know, so did Barack Obama, big time, didn't he? He was very, and Hillary Clinton, also hilarious for that.
Here's Macaroni Man saying he opposes, because Trump's ratcheting up the Greenland talk again, and getting them to see if they want to join the United States as opposed to Denmark. But Macaroni Man saying he opposes that. The Danes, they're probably busy. We have Andrea's going to be on next week, and you know, she'll tell us what the Danes think of that, because she's from Denmark. There, I'm sure she's she'll have an opinion on it anyway. But we'll leave it.
The thing is, it's very complex, isn't it? I mean, they don't like Denmark by and large anyway, the Greenlanders, because they're not. You know, it's not like Danes as we would. It's not a lot of Andreas living in Greenland. It's sort of like Inuit people, isn't it? Like for in the most part, and they resent the idea that they're ruled by Europeans, and they speak quite a lot in those terms, like almost like in ethnic terms about it, and consider it bizarrely some kind of colonialism, even though that's the wrong way to look at it. But you know, even the ones that like Denmark, you would think that the standard of living in Denmark is considerably higher than it is in the United States, like way higher. So you'd have to, when the Americans try and sell it, they're like, come on, you could be part of the United States, like the greatest country in the world. It's kind of like, well, you know, like I've got a Danish passport. Like that is basically got the highest standard of living in the world. Why would I want to go and live in Kansas and, you know, have like some crap life? No offense to people in Kansas. But obviously in the geopolitical sense, America in many ways is kind of underwriting that prosperity that the Danes have because America pays for their security. So it's an extremely complicated argument, isn't it, and discussion. And on it goes.
And on it goes. Again, we'll have Andrea next week, and maybe she'll let us know what's going on. One thing I watched, AI is doing a really good job on these videos, and I watched the history of the English monarchy. And I didn't realize that the Danes basically ruled, well, there was Danish kings in England for quite a while there. But, you know...
Canute. Make sure you spell that right, though. Don't... If you swap the letters around, you get yourself in trouble. But yeah, King Canute was...
But a lot of the kings of the past, until Queen Victoria here and Queen Elizabeth and King Charles, didn't have very long in the ruling and the reign. A lot of those things lasted like months before they were either stabbed by their uncle or different things happened, poisoned, and it wasn't something that you would really want. The crown was not, it was more of a curse, I think. Anyway, in the breaking news
Shakespeare writes of that, yeah.
Breaking news here, Zelensky has the first time revealed 20 points of the peace plan with Russia there. He said the plan described as the main framework for ending the war would include offering Russia the withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from eastern Ukraine and the creation of a demilitarized zone, would also include security guarantees from U.S. and NATO. And again, the U.S. would be the key one in there because that's the one that matters, right? And U.S. is, I mean, if we talk about NATO, the U.S. is NATO, right? When we talk about, you know, like Canadian media will say, oh, it's a NATO jet that defended Canada the last two incursions on the west coast here. NATO meaning American jets, right?
It always does, doesn't it? I mean, that's basically just another word for America at this point, which is why the Americans resent it.
The 40-year-old Canadian jets were on the tarmac there.
We're coming.
Can we get a boost? Anyway, not to make fun of the fine men and women that fight in our military, but more to poke some responsibility for how we've underfunded and under-equipped and just neglected our military. It's shameful what the ruling class does to our military.
Although one of those former military servants, pilots, Stephen Fuhr, is now in charge of that. So maybe he will improve things for his comrades.
He hasn't improved things with the media, though. 7 emails unanswered by Steve McNall, one of the most respected business reporters here in the Okanagan, and I've sent a couple myself to no answer. Maybe his email is broken.
Maybe he needs to procure a new email address.
So one of these, we just go through a confirmation of Ukrainian sovereignty. I don't know, like some of these are, we've talked about before, 800,000 Ukrainian in the military. Canada doesn't even have 55,000. Amazing.
Yeah, it's crackers, isn't it, to think. Ukraine, how long would Canada last in a war with Ukraine? I would say about maybe 6 hours or something like that.
Well, according to Chrystia Freeland, tanks were going to roll in Canada from the Americans, and we were going to defend ourselves. Because we were going to get nuclear weapons and just all this. Like, I mean, this is the rhetoric that's fed to through the CBC into the minds, the liberal hive mind, and to the people that just. Anyway, I don't want to get too worked up. Again, just the question for people: who defends the Canadian North from the Russians and Chinese? And who defends the Canadian North?
That must be our flotilla of nuclear-powered submarines. I'm sure that's what does it.
We have none.
Or
so that would be the
alternatively,
Americans.
Some Inuit with harpoons. Maybe they're the ones that are going to do it.
American nuclear warships and American nuclear subs and American fighter jets, F-35s, F-22 Raptors. But
And
hey,
a satellite
get
system, obviously, as well.
Let's get some Gripens up there because they can land on a road. Silver surpasses Apple, has become the third largest asset in the world. Silver on a tear, just absolute tear for all the silver stackers out there. Christmas came early for the silver stackers. I mean, they've been waited a long time for silver to run. It is Christmas for silver stackers, and if you understand what I'm saying, you are a stacker. And,
There'll be a few skeletons in basements surrounded by piles of silver that won't get to cash in. They'll just be there with their hoard.
Silver stackers are like a broken watch. They're going to be right at some point. So there you go. And they are right. The Hunt brothers tried to corner the silver market way back. I think it was in the late 80s, 1980 or something like that. This is from memory. But silver blowing through. And I think the meme stocks, they were trying to blow it through when they were doing GameStop. They tried to push silver higher and it failed. But silver running right now with gold. Gold and silver on fire. And the resource sector on fire. Here's the thing. Resource sector on fire. Copper, gold, silver, platinum, all these things on fire. Lithium, all on fire. And guess what? Canada leading in all these things. Guess what? Not participating. Why? Mexico said it best. Too much red tape. Thanks for coming out. I interviewed a mining guy that they had properties in Canada and they had properties in Mexico. Guess where they're putting their, and in the United States, where they're putting their energy? Where do they deploy the capital? Not in Canada. The other two places.
Yeah, not Yukon.
Anyway, here's a pollster who finds Canadians would put who they put on naughty and nice lists, and I guess this would depend on the people that you were asking, right? Because Donald Trump makes it in the top list on one side, and on the nice list for some people too. Elon Musk makes it on the nice. This is obviously very left-leaning. This list on the right here. Elon Musk as the top naughty list, right? Prince Andrew deserves to be there. Justin Trudeau, why doesn't he have top spot in Canada? Blows me away why he wouldn't have top spot. But Mark Carney's in there too. Jeff Bezos, Charlie Kirk.
It's crackers, isn't it? Like alleged murderer, two alleged nonsense. It's like, and then you just got like Elon Musk and Donald Trump. That just shows you what they think. Shows you what they think of them. They prefer. No, hold on. Is that right? Yeah, they prefer the alleged murderer, Luigi Mangione, or Mangione, to Katy Perry.
I don't know, like who this list was, where they did this list at the Anti-Hate Network, maybe. And then how's Prince Andrew?
It's a funny one, isn't it? Yeah, Zelensky's on there twice as well. I guess there are two Vladimir Zelenskys.
How's Prince Andrew?
How does he make the nice list?
4%
of people put Prince Andrew on the nice list.
How he makes the list? Yeah, Katy Perry, the astronaut. Okay,
Marvelous,
that's it,
isn't it?
That's it for Ian this year. Ian's wrapping it up for 2025. You got any Christmas wishes there? Do you got any Christmas wishes for the people on the really big show that watch? We do. We really appreciate all the people that come on, especially the people that come every day. And if you could just help us get the word out there, that'd be great. We are Canada's largest and best undiscovered news commentary show on the internet. We bring you stuff that the CBC doesn't dare touch because they feed you a narrative. And we're going to try and get tons more interviews coming up this year too. Again, at 1:30 we have Chris Barber. If you want to say anything to him, I'll have the comments open. Chris Barber will be on at 1:30 with John Carpe and talking about the decision to get Big Red back, the symbol of the Freedom Convoy. The only way we can get better is if we call attention to the waste, fraud, corruption, because that's every time they waste tax dollars, they're wasting money that you should have on your kitchen table. They take more from you. Those NGOs, I mean, it's been said, 10% of that money makes it makes it to wherever it's supposed to go, like gender affirming rice or something in Thailand. And if they want to prove us wrong, show us the use. They never show you the money, where the money ended up. They never show you, hey, this is what we built. Why don't they do that? Because there's nothing to show. Because otherwise they'd be trumpeting from the rooftops.
We talked a bit about Christianity, didn't we, or the established church?
Yeah.
They are in so many ways the successors to the sort of medieval church, aren't they? And they're just they take that tithe and they say, and we shall do good deeds with it, my son. And in the end, they just, much like the Catholic Church in periods of history, they just acquire lots of paintings and gold and jewelry and things and just like put it in a vault somewhere. You know, they abuse people's good nature, don't they? And they say, you know, they call their charities things like Save the Children. It's like, oh, gee, who wouldn't want to save the children? And Oxfam and things like that. Like, and then they get up to all kinds of naughtiness and they're exposed doing it from time to time. But they are in so many ways just a modern version of unscrupulous churches of the past.
Again, we do wish you a Merry Christmas, and especially for family and friends, it's a time to get together. And we can only hope for a better year, 2026. But, you know, like we did a prediction show. You can go watch it. Ian and I did a prediction show. I'm going to do one with Renee likely next week there. We're going to talk about predictions for 2026. You have to push back against the narrative. You have to push back against this climate religion. They're going to try and jam down your throat again. And they, you know, like this is even worse than the other one. This is where they're going to take private companies, and some of them American companies. 2 have already come here. And they're going to take your tax dollars to fund their investment so that they can tax our energy, like what you have a right to pay less taxes on. And one of the things too, Rosemary Barton could have asked, never asked. Mark Carney's company, Brookfield, dodged, and it's public knowledge, dodged $6.6 billion in taxes. And he said he would close that loophole. I see nothing.
And has the power to do it at any time he wishes.
Just when he sat down there and did that performance thing, signing the carbon tax, he could have done it right there and then. He could have signed that and said, that's the end of your loophole. He's the one that created the loophole. He was part of the tax policy. When you're the economic advisor, you're also advising on tax policy, because that's really all Canada, the government in Canada is a tax collector and a tax spender. Do you know what I mean? They collect taxes and then deploy the cash. That's what they do. That's their main function. Collect taxes.
Well, they certainly, I mean, their main function you might think would be protect the nation. But they don't really do that, as we've discussed many times, because there's no military.
They rely on the Americans for that, even though they tell you that they hate the Americans and all that stuff. And, you know, I was just in Tokyo, and again, Tokyo, beautiful place. You need to go there. And the love for the Americans there is very prevalent. And my son asked why. And it's because they recognize that they are protected by the Americans, just like we are. Yet most Canadians here would list America as an enemy. At the same time, they go to sleep every night under the protection of the United States of America. You can't even make this stuff up. And that's a fact.
Daddy issues.
Yeah.
That's what we've got.
I think more like the entitled brat. Anyway.
No. Anyway, Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas. And a Happy New Year. And we'll push harder to be better. That's how you get better. You compete. And that's what we should do, is compete. Compete to be better. And then, you know, have Americans choose us when we want to ship our products there. We need to compete. Remember that word? Remember, stop participation trophies. Compete. You know? We need to learn that again. Compete. Anyway, thank you for watching Now Media. Back at 1:30.